Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham. Joining me, Mr. Brenden Nunes. Everything is weird. Everything is new. We're actually in the same room. I, of course, am from ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat, and Brenden is from the Kings Herald and the Kings Pulse podcast. What's going on, Brenden?
A lot of new, I guess. This is kind of weird, James.
This is weird.
Yeah.
It's totally weird.
Do I look this way? Do I look at you? There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. I think we're supposed to allow the people to be like the third person in our conversation. So
the fourth. We have Mitch Richmond right here.
We do have Mitch Richmond's legs. He's cutting through, I think it's Hot Rod Williams and Robert Horry. I looked this up. I think it's like the 1997 season. There's only one season that Robert Horry played for the Suns.
I was a rookie in life. I was just born.
He was just born. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about how old I was at that point. All right, so hey, we are doing something different today. Brenden and I are both here at Golden One Center. We're in the media dining area. Dare we say Sean Cunningham is actually in the room with us. He's in the room. We can see him. He's working. He's right over there. He's waving at us. Sean Cunningham is here. He will not make an appearance on this week's pod, but we'll see. Maybe in the near future we'll have a return of Sean Cunningham. All right, so Brenden, how we just got done with practice. What was your thoughts outside of the fact that you got forearm shimmied by the media relations staff?
Yeah. I'm glad that we're letting everybody know about that.
Well, we don't have to. It's up to you.
No, it's okay. You got forearm shimmied too, so I feel
all
right.
Yeah. My guy that forearm shimmied me was way bigger than your guy that forearm shimmied
I don't know. My guy was kind of the star yesterday.
Kind of the star. Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, that's what I'm going to go with, all right?
All right.
And we'll leave names out of this, and it's perfect.
Leave names out. All right.
I think that the one standout to me at practice today was, I guess Justin Holiday is back. Saw that. That's not the standout, though.
He is. He is back.
Non-COVID related illness had him go out halftime in the Utah game, and then he wasn't available in Chicago. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was that, De'Aaron Fox was in a really good mood. I think it's the best mood I've ever seen De'Aaron Fox in, and maybe he just had a really good breakfast, and who knows. But they also beat the third seed, I want to say it is, Chicago Bulls. Yeah, and they might have been second prior to the loss last night. But they beat a pretty good Eastern Conference team and, went up 20 early, looked like they were playing pretty good and kept DeMar DeRozan contained in a way that they absolutely could not in the last game.
No, he's kind of off his heater.
He slowed down.
Yeah, he was on a heater there for a while, and I think DeMar DeRozan slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
And Kobe White didn't drop 31 on him like he did last time.
Right. But, yeah, De'Aaron was in a good mood. I think that And he's acknowledged, I think he said today, there's a slim chance of the postseason, but you still, sense an optimism going into next year and beyond that. And we've heard a lot these last couple of days, your piece with De'Aaron and Sam's piece with Domas talks about gelling in the offseason and going into next year with some positive momentum. And it seems like they're feeling good. There was good energy at the practice today after that win.
It was fun. De'Aaron, he talked about how he doesn't stay in Sacramento during the summer. That it's too hot, the dry heat dries him out, and he's got to put lotion on all the time.
Yeah.
But he goes back to Houston, and he lives in Houston during the summer, and then that's where he trains and gets ready. I expect him and a lot of these players to be in Sacramento quite a bit this summer. They'll make the trip out, and they'll get together, and they'll have pickup games, and they'll do some stuff here in the summer. They'll probably also go down to LA and meet up there as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I was curious about. We're hearing a lot of talk about the guys are going to meet up the offseason and everything, right? Didn't that happen a good bit last offseason with Mo Harkless and kind of hosting it? Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't work.
Yeah.
They did. They went down to LA. Mo Harkless has a gym that he works out at that everyone went down and hung out with at Mo's gym. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I think what we normally see is players if you're going to be serious about ramping up, usually players roll in September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then they start playing pickup games until, media days, usually around the 25th, 26th, 27th of September. And by that point, players have usually been in Sacramento. Most of the players have been here like 3 weeks working out together, really building some chemistry and some bonds, building some bonds, and just getting on the floor and playing. I know a couple of years ago, Fox came in such great shape that he just killed everybody. Like they were talking about, like he hadn't lost a pickup game the entire stretch in September, and I kind of expect that this year as well. Like I expect him to come back in pretty incredible shape. So let's get to some of the business. Number one, if you're watching on YouTube, go down below and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We did break 1,000 followers, so we're super excited. There's 1,000 subscribers. Kings Beat. Make sure that you're jumping on board with the Kings Beat. Get yourself a subscription, and we have the Off the Record with the Kings Beat Virtual Happy Hour Part 4 Infectious Disease Control is coming up on September 24th.
What's with the name? I never asked.
5:30 to 7:30. You don't know the story of the infectious disease control?
I feel like we're like living in infectious disease,
Okay,
poor
so
controlled.
I'm going to let Scott Moak tell that story. He is our guest for the evening. But there was a situation with Scott Moak and Kevin Durant where anytime someone bleeds, that's what, the game is paused for an infectious disease control situation. That's what they call it. But I don't think everyone announces that. Scott does. He finds it humorous. And Kevin Durant did not like that. And so it's a good story because it goes on from there. There's a second incident of an infectious disease control in the same game. And so there's this moment where,
Yeah, interesting. I have heard some fun stories from Moak in this room we're sitting in. So should be good.
He's awesome. He's a great dude, and I think everyone will enjoy. He's just such a great conversationalist, and he's a lot of fun. He's got a great energy to him. And so if you haven't got to see much of Scott Moak, he's been on the podcast once or twice in the past. I know at one point the Kings blocked him from coming on the podcast. He was not allowed to come on. He was scheduled, and then he ran it by his bosses, and they said no. But that was a long time ago, and a different group of people were running things around here at that point. So super excited about that. That's on March 24th. That is only for premium subscribers. I would have made it earlier in March, but I like to do them on Thursdays, and the Thursday that's coming up is St. Patrick's Day, and I will probably be somewhere drinking on St. Patrick's Day.
I didn't realize that. I would have got pinched.
March 17th. You would have got pinched. Yeah. Let's see. What is it? I don't even know. Oh, wow. That's in 2 days. My bad. Yeah. So Thursday, we will have a podcast on St. Patrick's Day. So maybe we will dress up in St. Patrick's Day gear.
And they play the Celtics the day after?
They do. I think that does not bode well for...
A Celtics jersey's not. It's green.
Yeah, I guess you could wear a Celtics jersey.
No, I'm going to pass.
Yeah,
a Rondo.
I think having a bunch of Celtics fans, especially the Irish ones here in the building the Friday after St. Patrick's Day, could get a little reckless. So it should be good. Outside of that, there's a promo code down below for Kings Beat merch. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, we got 15% off. We're not wearing any Kings Beat merch right now, but we are coming out with the new. If you like the white sweatshirt, the Fire and Ice sweatshirt, we have made T-shirts of it. So you can now buy it in T-shirt form. That'll go up on the site later today. And so if you want some Kings Beat merch, that should be cool. It'll be on there. You can order your shirts and I'll send them out to you, which has been a trip, sending people out stuff. It's I had to buy a label maker, a bunch of bags, scale. You guys think that I'm
I think you already had them. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm running drugs here, clearly. I do live in the Grass Valley area, so it's very possible. But yes, so okay, so let's get to the show. Brenden, the thing that I think really stood out from the not the win, but the night against the Chicago Bulls was, and a lot of people showed up in Bulls gear. A lot of people were in Bulls. It was, I want to say it was a 50-50 split. I think I would be lying.
Yeah, it was loud for Bulls, any sort of Bulls plays that were going on.
MVP chance?
MVP chance. Anytime Alex Caruso, I thought I missed something looking down, and because the crowd got loud, and I was like, oh, it's just what happens when Alex Caruso shoots the ball. Yeah, it definitely was loud. I think weirdly that when you saw the Kings kind of 20-point halftime lead start to diminish and the Cleveland or the Chicago fans in the building got a little bit of energy behind them there, that Sacramento fan base really responded when it became like a 2-point game, but then Sacramento's able to like bring it to 4. Like normally I think that slight jump when you're losing a lead, the fan base wouldn't respond to too much, but it almost felt like competing with the Chicago fans in the building.
I think the one thing we did learn is that everyone booed Tristan Thompson.
Yeah. I thought that happened while he was here too. I don't know.
I thought it was interesting. I even joked about it on Twitter. The Tristan Thompson hate. I don't know. He didn't say anything negative about Sacramento after he left.
It's that he played 2 games with Indiana and wrote a thank you to Indiana, and he did not say anything about Sacramento.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because it's weird that he would, number one, that he would do that. He would feel the need to say something about his time in Indiana and not Sacramento. But at the same time, does anyone really care? It's Tristan Thompson. Not to be rude to Tristan Thompson, but, I mean, we're not talking about, I guess when Jason Terry did it, it was a little dirtier. Jason Terry, not only did the Kings let him out of his contract and he didn't have to come to Sacramento, but on top of that, he, went on a radio station and almost immediately trashed Sacramento after they let him off, and that was weird. So that's why Jason Terry got booed forever. The other guy who always gets booed here in Sacramento is Spencer Hawes. Everyone hates Spencer Hawes.
Isn't James Johnson one? One year I was unaware of this and I think presented a fake trade that had James Johnson in it. And isn't he the one that showed up in a Sonics hat?
He did. Yeah. Okay, so James Johnson, there were a couple of things that people didn't like about James Johnson. He, first of all, James Johnson can do a roundhouse kick and kick the rim. That dude is crazy athlete. And I think he's a black belt. So he's not the guy to get in a fight with. But when he was in Sacramento, he actually took a bunch of time off in the middle of the season because his lady had a baby, and I think they're worried it was going to be a preemie or not. It was a weird situation. And so he missed 3 or 4 weeks, and he came back with a gigantic neck tattoo. All the way across, the no regrets tattoo. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that he earned a lot of people weren't happy about his time here. He did, if I'm not mistaken, he had a buzzer beating 3 at the Garden to beat the Knicks, which at least there's that,
There's something, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I think Scal Labissiere beat the Knicks with a buzzer beating 3 too, didn't he? He beat somebody. Scal did. And the fact that James Johnson is still in the NBA all these years later and Scal Labissiere is not, to me, is a quandary. That one stands out as kind of strange.
Scal should have got a neck tat.
Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because Scal didn't get a PPP on his forehead or a giant neck tat or, Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe Scal's just too soft to do that, and that's why he's not in the league. Okay, so when we get to the Bulls game itself, there was a lot of good, but I think we have to start with Sean's least favorite segment of the show because Sean is still in the room. Tuesday overreactions. Donte DiVincenzo is...
The Kings can't afford him.
The savior of the Kings. He earned himself $20 million a year with his play against the Chicago Bulls. He is now the answer to everything. Every question regarding the Sacramento Kings begins and ends with Donte DiVincenzo. Your thoughts?
Well, you need to present me a question, and I have an answer for you already. I think that Donte... It's what we had all been asking for, and it's interesting that it took Justin Holiday being unavailable for Donte to actually get the opportunity to be in the starting lineup. But I think that you saw, there was probably one moment where I was like, what was that shot? That you kind of see a couple of those for Donte, but it wasn't as egregious as some of these previous ones we've seen.
He's good for 2 to 3 a game. I think he only had 1.
And I think the way I worded it earlier was his mistakes are really loud, but a lot of the good things he does are pretty quiet. And I think that makes it just leads to some people being a little bit more frustrated with him at times, and understandably so when there's some of those moments where they're just kind of shocking. But he played great. I think that him playing alongside Fox and Sabonis and seeing him get more reps alongside those guys, I want to say he ended the night with 34 minutes. You did see, kind of confirmed you're going to see less of those crazy shots and off the dribble. He's more spotting up and catching while he stands still, which I thought was interesting, was something that Alvin pointed out as well. And yeah, he does all the things that you need on the defensive end. He was the one taking care of DeMar DeRozan, which is a tough matchup. I was impressed with his passing.
Yeah.
Rebounding. I really like Donte.
He's a great rebounder for a guard.
Yeah.
I mean, he does not mind going up against the trees and flying in and going over the top. On the defensive end, I'm going to point out a couple of things. There was a play, I think it was third, fourth quarter, where someone went to drive to the lane and then tried to make a crafty pass to a big man, and DiVincenzo flashed into the screen out of nowhere, and the guy threw the ball out of bounds. And he does a lot of little things that do not show up in the box score at all. He gets a lot of deflections, which that is tracked, but
he had 1 steal yesterday, which does not represent how disruptive
he was.
Had
3 or 4.
Yeah.
It did, yeah. So I thought he was tremendous. He hit a late 3 that was sort of like one of those backbreakers that helped the Kings get over the top. It was almost like he was refined in what he does. So he was staying in his spot. He was moving with the play, but staying on that outside the key, opposite for the skip pass. And we saw a lot of 2-man game with Fox and Sabonis, and then they kept finding him for open looks. I thought he was really good. I thought Davion Mitchell was really good. But to stay with DiVincenzo, we got him in post game, and I think it's the second time we've got him, maybe third time we've got him since the trade, and he is really intense.
He is. I think yesterday, not as much so. It almost seemed like, in a better mood, as anybody would be, with kind of had struggled earlier, and I think that still figuring out what his role is on this team. And yeah, he played really well. Yesterday, he was more loose. It was the first time where it was like, okay, you got to see this guy's personality, and because most of the time he's very straight-faced. He and Davion both give you kind of typical media answers, but Davion even Donte is more tense, while Davion is just more not much emotion going on.
Yeah, Davion is he's staccato. It's but I'm done. Every question, every answer is very short. I didn't get that with Donte DiVincenzo. He wants to start. He wants to be the starter here. He wants to be the starter next to De'Aaron Fox. I don't think there's any question about that. He was looking when he left Milwaukee. He's looking for an opportunity where he has a bigger role, where he's not just literally the 5th guy on a team that is going to play for a championship, but who has 4 guys who have been all-stars in the past all around him. And so I think that there's an opportunity here for him to be really, really good, but he has to rein it in a little bit. And I think if you give him an opportunity to be the starting shooting guard and to settle into that position, I think you've got an opportunity to build something. He's definitely a outstanding defender. He's a bit of a gambler. He's more of a gambler than a guy like Davion. Davion is he sticks to his guy like glue, and you see, some crazy things from DiVincenzo where he's playing passing lanes and stuff like that. But I think, to be honest with you, there's no reason for him not to start at that shooting guard spot the rest of the season. And if he's not starting, then I'm wondering why the whole time. Because number one, I think he's a better player than Justin Holiday, and I'm not trying to bash on Justin Holiday. I just think he's a better player. He's a more versatile player than Justin Holiday. But I also think that there's potential for him to have a major future here. And if you don't like sort of foster the right type of relationship here, and you just end up matching some offer that someone else gives to Donte DiVincenzo as opposed to negotiating a deal with him to keep him here and to make him happy, then you run into that problem that maybe you get a guy who's not exactly excited about being here. And as of right now, I think he is, but it's got to come with the right set of like parameters. He wants to be a starter. He wants to be a guy who that you can rely on for all kinds of things, but really I think he wants to find a home where he can excel, and I think the Kings can be that spot, but you almost have to commit to him now, and I don't know why they haven't to this point, but we're down to like, what, 12 games? So in my mind, he should be the starter the rest of the season.
I'm going to be pretty annoyed if he doesn't start next game. I wouldn't really understand the logic going back to Justin Holiday. Like you said, it's not like it doesn't make any sense to me that to pitch that Justin Holiday is more impactful right now. I think that the only difference is that Holiday is, I guess hypothetically, because we haven't seen it in Sacramento, able to shoot off movement. Outside of that, like, Donte is a capable shooter. His shot has started to fall in Sacramento. He's a more versatile and physical defender. One thing that really stood out to me, because I've been kind of defending Justin Holiday, I guess
You're Justin Holiday
not aggressively or anything. It's just so many people are
Justin
coming
Holiday
at him.
Apologies, I just heard it.
So many people are just like that Justin Holiday is really just not good, and I think I've been kind of defensive, and it's been a tough stance as the games have gone on, I'm not going to lie. But I think the one thing that really stood out to me when you just get a game with Justin not out there and Davion and Donte getting more, just getting all of his reps, is that those two guys, while neither of them are phenomenal passers, they're both capable passers, and they're good at putting the ball on the floor in a way that Justin isn't. If Holiday gets closed out on, or he's not attacking that closeout in the same way that you would see Donte or Davion do, or when Donte and Davion make their cuts and get a catch, they're able to make a nice pass from there. Like, I felt like the ball was moving really well. And it's not that it sticks with Justin Holiday, but I just don't think he makes quite the same reads as Donte or Davion.
Okay, so I'm going to give one of the reasons why I believe that Justin Holiday has been playing so much. And it has everything to do with the fact that him and Sabonis played together in Indiana. And it's not just that they were teammates. It's that Justin Holiday knows how to cut off of Sabonis. And not everyone has played with a big man like Sabonis. And if you haven't, then there's an issue, right? You're not doing what you should be doing to optimize him. And I think we're still seeing, there were plays where I remember like Harrison Barnes and one other player cutting at the same time and going right into the same space. There's just this flow that you have to learn when it comes to playing with a big man. And it's also, Brenden, why Trey Lyles has fit in so quickly, because I fully missed this. I had forgotten that he had played with Nikola Jokic. Yeah. And so you're seeing how players who have played with a big man like what we're seeing from Sabonis, which is like a center of the universe big. That's what I like to call him. They're a guy that it doesn't matter where you put them. Everyone is moving off of them. And I think if you have players that have played with him before or played with players like him, it makes a transition easier. Eventually, you don't need to worry about that. But when you don't have practice time and you're late in the season, and we're talking about the Kings have had like 3 practices, I think, since the trade itself. And it's just really hard to instill all of these concepts on the fly during a season. And so I get why Alvin Gentry would give a longer leash to Justin Holiday, and why he would try a guy like Trey Lyles. Again, I think it's two very specific. It's one reason. It's because they know what they're doing and other guys don't. So I think that's one thing, but you got to get through that. You got to get past it. And I think what's interesting is we're starting to see a lot more play sets, right, from Alvin Gentry. It's almost like he like cracked open the playbook, and we're seeing a bunch of things that we haven't seen before. And a lot of it is just because Sabonis is here and he changes everything.
Yeah. And there was even a couple of the older ones where, like, Donte is in Buddy Hield's spot, which I think speaks to how they feel about his shooting, even though it maybe hadn't been going down at a great rate. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely aspects, especially when they try to post up Sabonis, where it looks like the other side of the floor, there's not much cutting going on, or like you said, two guys cutting at the same time, or maybe nobody moving is because you're thinking the guy next to you is, and you're two in your head about it.
Harrison Barnes left the corner, and Sabonis passed to the corner. Like, we had some turnovers specifically because guys were cutting at the wrong time, or they're just, the chemistry isn't there yet.
Yeah, and that'll come over the offseason. I think it is going to be interesting, like, if they do end up making a coaching change, that's a whole nother adjustment on top of it. But also very important, in no matter if there is that change, making progress and getting used to where your spots are, where your teammates' spots are when it comes to the guys that are still going to be here around next year. That's kind of your core, which Fox, Domas, you would think that Donte is partially included in that, likely. And I thought it was interesting. Did you catch that, like Donte said a couple times yesterday, he was also talking about the offseason and building with this group, which I thought was kind of interesting since technically he's...
Yeah, I think he believes he's going to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a restricted free agent. And I don't think that we haven't started to look at dollar figures. I have heard, that, again, he had turned down I think it was a 3 to 4 year deal around $8 or $9 million a year from the Bucks. So I know that, they're kind of around that range, but at the same time, DiVincenzo's ankle injury, some of the things that have happened to him have kind of, like, it's hurt his value for sure. And so, what he would get last year at this time versus what he would get at this year versus this coming summer might be two totally different things. But I also know there are a lot of teams in the league that have mid-level exceptions that start roughly around like $9.5 million a year, but they're more like a 4 year, like 42, 44. So it's possible he does get into that range. And I still think at that price, the Kings match. If we start getting up into someone goes wild and gives Donte DiVincenzo like Bogdanovich money, like a 4 year 72, then the Kings are going to think twice and actually three times. And
was that intentional? The bogey in Donte?
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, that's the number that I think you would fear.
Right.
So no, it wasn't intentional because they were actually traded for each other once it fell through. That was funny. That was a funny moment from.
It was. I think that Donte's situation is like interesting to me with when it comes to, and at some point I'd like to hear where he's at with all this, but first year he doesn't get all too much opportunity when he's in Milwaukee, and then second year he's dealing with the bubble, which is just a really weird situation for any player. And then after his second season, going into year 3 is when he was traded to Sacramento and then not traded to Sacramento, which I would imagine has you questioning, how does this team really feel about me? That being Milwaukee for Donte himself. And, it is a business.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd be interesting to hear kind of where Donte's at with that. But then even going into that year 3, where last season for him, he's played all 66 games that he played. He started every single one of them for the eventual championship winning team there. Mm-hmm. And I just think that, there was still people talking about bogey throughout the year, and then to still go back to that team that was clearly interested in you before, that very bluntly, and how often is there a scenario where it's like, could it be any more clear that this team values you when you're coming from a situation where I could see how you were probably questioning that when he's the one getting thrown around in trade scenarios for that team. And I would think that, he's got the biggest payday of his life to this point coming up this next season. And I kind of wondered, will some of the erratic play calm down when he's made that contract?
No, that's a good point, that once you do get that contract, I mean, some players, like we've seen it in the past, some players get the big money and then they stop working hard and stop being effective. I think other guys, like they want more. Like DiVincenzo's very motivated. Like I said, he's very intense. And Alvin Gentry jokingly said, "Yeah, we really like Donte DiVincenzo. We literally traded for him twice." That's what he said in post game. That just to show you how much the Kings do value DiVincenzo. And like I don't think that there's probably like a 90-something% chance that he's back with the Kings next season. I think something dramatically would have to happen. And if you get him calmed down and he starts hitting, 38, 39% from three, and he's averaging, 6 threes a game, he's your starting shooting guard. And I'm okay with him being your starting shooting guard and then coming off the bench with a guy like Terrence Davis, who, just so people know, Terrence Davis was out on the court actually like shooting and dunking with a splint on. I don't think he will play again this season at all, but he is already progressing and trying to stay in shape and getting there. Just to close the book on DiVincenzo a little bit, what would you like feel comfortable? What is the dollar amount that you would go, you know what, this is as high as I'm going to go, or I wouldn't go this, I wouldn't go above this number, or this is where I would be comfortable?
Yeah, if I have to go like my walk away, so absolute ceiling, like if I'm signing it, I'm still probably a little iffy about it. Maybe 14. It's a lot. Like to me, I think we talked about this the other day. Like Josh Hart is a guy that makes sense to me. Josh Hart's about $12 million a year. So I think that sort of range makes sense, and I do think that there's a solid chance for him to be the starting two guard on this team. If he is able to hit shots at a good rate and continue to progress, he's still 25 years old. Mm-hmm. That and still coming back from this ankle thing. Like I said, just as he was getting a rhythm, despite I think some people questioning what his future would be in Milwaukee, once he finally establishes himself, once you break your way into the rotation, that's when you can try to start do a little bit more and expand your game, and he just didn't get that opportunity. It got cut short, so potentially there's even more for Donte. I would say my walk-away number would be like 14, 15.
14, okay. That's interesting. I'm not going that high. But that doesn't mean I don't like him. Like, what I'm comfortable is, 440, 444. I think at the most maybe 448, so like $12 million a year. I don't think I would go above that, but then again, I think that's part of the reason why he hasn't been starting as well. I think the Kings have been trying to restrict his value slightly, but
which scares me.
No, I get it. I mean, to me, that's just. It's short-sighted business. And
you just traded away the two guys that didn't want to be here, that were hurting your culture. Why risk? And Donte comes in, and I guess everybody says this, but Donte backs it up with his play on the floor, that he wants to change the culture. He wants his energy to be infectious and contagious, and you see that. So, like, why would you risk? You just got rid of the guys that are harming your culture, possibly making another guy question how much he wants to be here. Like, that's where I was like, really 11 minutes in, I think that was the Denver game.
Yeah, I think some of these things that happen, they're like, there's a specific reason why it happens. Either it's a bad matchup. I don't think there was any intent to play him 11 minutes in a game. I just don't think there was. Like, you didn't come into the game thinking, oh, we're only going to play him. I think it's just the way that things kind of spun out of control. Yeah. And even in that game, wasn't it like Davion went down for a little segment of the game, and so it kind of threw the rotations off. I think someone may have made a mistake with rotations and stuff like that. I mean, these things happen. As long as it wasn't like it happens every game.
Right. And I think that was like, I wrote that article for you at the Kings Beat, and it was like, as long as this is the outlier, completely understandable and forgivable. And so far, it clearly looks like it does. Well, it was 11 minutes that night. I want to say 17 the night after, and then he plays 34 last game. And then his previous team is coming into Golden One Center. So I'm curious to see how that goes as a guy that sometimes we're like, he's doing a little bit too much. Yeah, we're gonna have to see how that goes.
We're going to have to see how that goes. It's intriguing. And outside of that, the Kings versus Bulls, that was a really good game. I thought it was a fun game. The crowd was spectacular. Sean, what was the number? Sean is still in the room. 15,800?
It was just a few short of 16,000.
Yeah. So it was a big crowd. There was actually the upper deck actually had fans in it. There wasn't like they didn't pan to a section and there was like 4 people with their feet up, like almost like lounging like they're at the beach because the entire section is open. So we didn't see any of that. I thought it was an engaged crowd. I thought the game was fun. It was back and forth. Kings blew a big 20-point lead, but let's be honest, Chicago's a really good team. They've got incredible scorers all over the place. We saw a big man battle. I thought that was spectacular. We saw Harrison Barnes like disappear, but at the same time play spectacular defense for segments, trying to shut down DeMar DeRozan, which is nearly impossible. Again, like Zach LaVine got hot for a few minutes. I just thought overall, like the Kings brought energy. It was a good defensive battle for segments of the game, and they keep building 20-point leads, and that tells me that they're good enough to build a 20-point lead, which is a positive. Now, the fact that they can't hold on to a 20-point lead is a negative, but
it's progress.
Still, they are going out there, and there are nights where you're like, this actually looks like pretty good.
Yeah. And I think that, maybe it's holding on to or starting with low bars and expectations should be higher, but like you did blow that lead against Chicago. I think at halftime we were all like, okay, let's see how this third quarter is going to go. And that's been a case with Kings teams and earlier this year and even previous seasons of they have a reputation for blowing leads. And once it starts, you can just feel like everybody on Sacramento is just accepting that this is happening. And there was a minute of that, of like maybe end of third, beginning of fourth, where I was like, man, people, body language it's not angry, but it's just so disappointed. Like, here we go again. And Domas was out there. This was the first time I'd seen him doing this on the floor, like kind of yelling at some of his teammates and, in a productive way, like right after dapping him up, high fives, like just let's get engaged here. And when he got asked about it post game, it was just, staying more disciplined, taking less risks and things like that. And it was good to see them. Chicago cut the lead just like we all expected them to. Mm-hmm. And still Sacramento was able to pull through in a way, like bounced back from what seemed like they had given up for a second, to be honest.
Yeah. I remember there was a moment where Tristan Thompson was really impactful, like strangely impactful. I mean, he had 2 huge blocks. And then on top of that, he was fighting with Sabonis in the post like crazy. There was a point where Sabonis was working so hard to keep Tristan Thompson off the glass, and 2 of his teammates just watched the ball bounce like twice, and then Tristan Thompson fought through the Sabonis eventually, and Sabonis got called for a foul. And I think it was Harkless and
Davion was one of them. There we go.
And he literally like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. Like I was sitting here blocking out, and you've got to go get the ball. I'm doing everything I can to clear out. And Sabonis didn't have a double-double, which he's had a double-double in almost every game he's played in Sacramento. I think he finished with 7 rebounds.
But every single one of the starters had at least 6.
Oh, that's good.
Like it seemed like it was kind of, that play was representative of it, of I'm going to make sure that their big doesn't get it, but come in and secure it. The other guys on his team.
I watched Harrison Barnes fly in for a couple of rebounds. I was like, hey, look at that. Fox into with 6, like what you said. Trey Lyles, he was not given scoring opportunities, but he had 4 offensive rebounds in the first half. He manufactured his own points. We just talked to Trey Lyles at practice, and he talked about that too. Like, look, I know who I am as a player now, and I know what I have to do as a player in order to get my buckets, to get my points, and to be, he's like, I can't just be a one-trick pony where I'm shooting the 3 ball the whole time. I've got to do more, and that means crashing the glass. That means going in and mixing it up and getting some putbacks. I thought he was really effective, and I don't think the Kings ran a single play for him or got him a single wide-open look the entire game. when he has gotten looks, he's been really good. But
not starter good.
Yeah, when you're looking, he was honestly like, look, Fox, Sabonis, and Barnes are 3 really good scorers. That's not who I need to be for this team. I need to be a rebounder. I need to hit my floor spacing shots. But overall, I have to understand that that's something that's going to happen. I'm not going to get these opportunities.
Yeah, I think that he's played well. I certainly feel like I would not mind picking up his option at all. What is it, $2.6 million team option, and have him as a 8th, 9th guy on this team. Like I'm totally good with that. I think asking him to be a starter is a little bit too much. And you agree with me there, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a position that I think everyone looks at and you go, okay, look, either you go get a stretch 4 that is like a shot blocking, big time stretch 4. Sean is leaving us. See ya, Sean.
Bye-bye.
He's not sorry. Either you go get a stretch 4 and you have a man that position, or you get a really good 3 and you slide Harrison Barnes over to the 4. And again, I think Harrison Barnes as a 4 next to Sabonis, it makes me a lot more confident than Harrison Barnes as a 4 next to Richaun Holmes. And it's not a bash on Holmes. It's because Sabonis does those little things like box out everybody so a guy like Harrison Barnes can go get the rebound. And, if you have a guy who's already averaging 12 rebounds a game in your starting lineup, which is, basically 4 rebounds a game more than what Richaun Holmes typically brings. And Sabonis almost up to 13 rebounds a game going into last night. But if you have that type of big, then you can have a specific rebounding power forward, a guy who's not a great rebounder, but also not a horrible rebounder. A 6 rebound a game guy, and next to Sabonis should be a 7.5 rebound a game guy at the 4. And so I think there is some looks there where you can change things. I just don't think if you come back next season and your power forwards are Trey Lyles and Chimezie Metu, it kind of feels like if you come into next season and Donte DiVincenzo has not established himself as a starting 2 guard, but you've got Donte and you've got Justin and you've got Terrence Davis. Again, I don't think that position is settled, and that's not how this team should walk into next. They need to have more established starter level players. So again, I'm kind of not on board with Trey Lyles and Chimezie Metu being brought back unless it's with the understanding you're not going to play very much. One of them is not going to play very much because you need to have someone else who's better who's playing those positions.
Right. And I think having a better guy gives you more opportunity to kind of win games when you're having a quieter Harrison Barnes game like we saw in Chicago. He had 6 points. This is the 9th game all season that he's had single digits in points, and it's the only game that they've won. Typically, I mean, as the 3rd guy, or even if you want to say the number 2 for times earlier this year, then you just can't have nights where he disappears. And this doesn't happen all that often. It's maybe like 1 every 10 games.
Yeah.
And then also on the other end, you have 1 every 10 where he puts 25 up for you. Yeah. So I think that you're allowed to have, or you can get away with that level of variance from Harrison Barnes when you add another player who is what you're getting on a nightly basis. Like, you're not getting the 31 points between Davion and Donte that you got last night every single night. But you all of a sudden have guys that on certain nights they can do that. So I think that if you get somebody that can do it more consistently, though, that you can live with the Harrison moments. Same with, you're not relying on Donte and Davion, but if they do have one of those nights, it's just an extra, kind of coming back to if you get a 3rd option and everybody just has one less level down of responsibility, that I think the roster starts to make sense. And I see some depth, but that scares me. I've said that a couple times these last couple seasons, it feels like.
Yeah, every time you think they have depth, the depth doesn't end up panning out the way you thought it would. The Kings do have depth at the center position. They still have 5 guys, which is squirrely. That's crazy. Not that we're seeing most of those guys. Big shout out to the Sabonises, who had their first child on Saturday. That is why Domantas missed Saturday's game against who did they play on Saturday?
Denver. No, Denver. He was unavailable. Utah.
Oh, it was Utah.
Utah.
Yeah, he got he got the suspension, the 1-game suspension. That's why he missed the
Denver
game.
Yes.
Yeah. So Utah, and first of all, there's something to that I'll point out. There was a tweet that went out from Gary Gerald that said that Domantas Sabonis' wife had a baby and announced the baby. And then we get to Saturday, and he was listed out for personal reasons. So it's very clear what happened. But you go back, and Gary Gerald deleted the tweet. And that's because for some reason, like I assume the Kings called and said, "Hey, you're putting out someone's personal business without approval." And this isn't a knock on Gary Gerald at all. He's one of my favorite people ever. But it was so when we got to post game on Monday night, I actually started post game and I asked him if he wanted to say something about Saturday. And I got some people on Twitter, "Oh, we already knew that. And it's like, okay, look. When someone has personal reasons and they ask, clearly we even saw the tweet get pulled down from Gary Gerald. Like, I'm not going to start reporting on something that I don't know anything about. I want to make sure there's nothing wrong. I want to make sure that we're not overstepping bounds. But when a player has a personal issue, I've always looked at it as like, look, you have a personal issue. And a lot of times in the past, what the Kings would do in those situations they would pull you aside and say, okay, look, here's what the personal issue is kind of about, but we're going to ask you not to report that, but we just want you to know that it is a real personal issue, and this is kind of why there's a personal issue. But please don't report that. And someone would go, well, why won't you just report it? Because you have some news. And it's like, well, because it's literally someone's personal issue. And so, you can go look at court records or whatever for some players and go, oh, that was a personal issue. That's one thing. But there are other times where, we could get in a situation where, the outcome isn't positive and we don't want to overstep our bounds. And as long as I kind of have a feel for what's happening, I'm okay with the personal issue. That's okay with me. Now, we've had a few extra personal issues this year, which have been baffling. But at the same time, I'm not going to dig in. I'm not going to dig into Rashawn Holmes and say, look, man, I watched you warm up, and then 5 minutes later, you're out for the game on personal issues, and then we see you at practice, and then the next night you're out for personal issues. There's something going on, and whether it's he's just not ready to play or he has some other personal issue like his mom is brought up on social media in the past, I'm going to give some of these guys a little bit of a leash here to have moments because they're human and they have all kinds of issues. You're asking someone to go live away from their family basically for 6 months of the year. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes they need to attend something. Sometimes it's too hard. Something has gone wrong and they just need a day or two. And so I'm just going to make sure people understand that. With Sabonis, a very specific issue. Like the team could not confirm whether or not his wife had just given birth on Saturday or on Friday night. And so when we asked him about that, and you got to see literally the joy, that was spectacular. The joy of Sabonis, he beamed. He was so excited.
His first kid.
Yeah, his first game back from after missing. It's good stuff. So does all that make sense to you? Because this is one of those moments where you're learning on the fly, and sometimes it's weird, and you're like, okay, how should I handle this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's easy to forget all the personal lives that these guys have and what they have going on behind the scenes, and reasons that you may never hear about for somebody being in a slump or not being fully engaged. For myself, it made it kind of weird sometimes at the beginning of the year when I first really become aware of that, made me feel bad or hesitant to criticize people for not being engaged because you never know. And I think I'm somebody that keeps things to myself, so I tend to think that people probably have things going on but aren't saying it. But that's kind of what we do, I guess, in nice ways. I think reasonable. There's times that people deserve to to be not locked in or anything like that. But I think interestingly with Sabonis, he's had such a complicated situation with the move, and he's, might not have a place here yet. He's just having.
No, he's living in the Sawyer.
Yeah, just had a child.
Justin
And
Holiday is living in the Sawyer.
And he's playing how well?
Yeah.
This is probably me searching for ways to really find even more optimism than I already have. But it's like, if Sabonis gets settled, do we get an even better version?
No, I mean, it's a good question. I think we will see a better version. We'll see a better version of him, especially if the Kings put better players around him. I mean, I think that's very clear. You put better players around Sabonis, you put knockdown shooters, he's going to average 8 assists a game. That's what you have to do. And if you even go back to his time in Indiana, who did he have that's just a flat-out knockdown shooter?
Justin Holiday.
Yeah, Justin Holiday, who averaged 10 points a game. No, I mean, that's the thing. If you had, even when we talked about, the potential for Ben Simmons coming to Sacramento, I always said, the real intriguing thing is, could you possibly get Ben Simmons without giving up Fox, without giving up Halliburton, but also without giving up Buddy? Because if you had an elite floor spacer with Ben Simmons, then it's oh, okay, now this gets interesting.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you're going to have to give up something to get someone like that. And
you needed to get a different Buddy. You couldn't have kept the same Buddy.
No, you're right. What you need is a different version of Buddy Hield. I mean, this team, there's no question, they need a monster three-point shooting guy.
But the player archetype, which is what we've been saying a lot at the end of this year.
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to apologize. I don't know how the audio will work out with this. It should be fine, but we have a Coke machine that keeps turning on and off.
Coca-Cola.
No, it's actually Derrick Williams. He's sitting over there. Yes, I said that. The Coke machine, Derrick Williams. Derrick Williams is not here. I don't know where Derrick Williams is playing at this point, but he's still only 28 years old.
Columbia, maybe?
I don't know. He kept playing. He did go play in Europe. If you don't know that reference, George Karl once said that even a Coke machine could get more than one rebound in 32 minutes of action, which the only one who played 32 minutes that night and got one rebound was Derrick Williams, who was 6'8" and could jump over a Kia or maybe even a BMW. I mean, the guy could literally fly and just didn't go rebound. So that's why we call he was called the Coke machine.
I did not know the story. I
thought you didn't know the Derrick Williams story?
Yeah, did you catch me say Columbia? I was on a completely different page here.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, Derrick Williams, they called the Coke machine.
No, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, we called, and the Sacramento Kings fans called him the Coke machine from then on. I think we even referenced him as the Coke machine with George Karl, which George Karl would love that because, he came up with it. Yeah, so it's good stuff. Okay, so we've had a couple of games here where the Kings have lost, where you're like, man, they really shouldn't have lost. And, excuse me, I'm just going to ask, is this the best of all possible worlds? I am a big Voltaire fan, so so Voltaire wrote the book called Candide in the 1700s, and there's Dr. Pangloss who talks about the best of all possible worlds, and whatever is happening is what should happen. I don't fully believe that, but in this situation, we're seeing a team play hard. We're seeing them build big leads. We're seeing a framework of a star duo. We're seeing a really nice third, fourth option in Harrison Barnes. We're seeing players miss shots, which is causing you to lose games, causing you to lose momentum. But we're watching something grow while the team sits at now 25 wins and the 6th spot in the lottery. This team needs more. The easiest way to get more is either to draft a really, really high-level player in the top 5 or 6 of this year's draft, or to trade that pick to go get a really high-level player. But the more losses, the better at this point. And I know some fans will disagree with that, and I'm not a tank guy, but I'm not watching tank. I'm watching a team who's growing and learning and figuring things out. and losing. Is that okay with you?
It's okay, yeah. I mean, I think that I'm very optimistic with what we've been seeing. I am, like, trying to catch myself because at the end of the day, this is a 25-win team, and it hasn't been Sabonis the entire time. But, like, if you want to say absolute best-case scenario, it's that, holy crap, both these guys are putting up 50 combined a night between De'Aaron and Sabonis, and all, like, oh my God, I didn't know that Donte DiVincenzo had this in him. Like, I guess I'm just trying to, I feel like I've been very optimistic, and I think there's good reason to for everything that you just laid out. I just am trying to bring myself down a little bit because, yeah, they do have the asset to go make a substantial move this offseason. But you still have to make that happen. We've seen them have substantial assets or things that we would give that label before and them still do nothing with it. Like, you still have Rashawn Holmes sitting there kind of not really doing all too much. What if he's still on this team next year? So I agree with you that it is optimistic and there's a lot of positive momentum with this team for, I think, very good reasons. You're getting up 20 against quality teams. You just beat the Chicago Bulls, who, again, are not quite the same team they were earlier in the year. They're just on a slower stretch of the season, but that's a quality team. You played well against Utah.
Interesting. No Lonzo Ball.
No Lonzo Ball.
Like, he does duck Fox. I'm not. I'm just joking. That's a Greg Wissender thing on Twitter, that Lonzo ducks Fox.
It's
proven. So Utah.
Yeah, they've played a lot of teams really well in that first half, and I am with you where it's like that is really encouraging. That's so much progress than anything we saw before. We would see one or two. We would see moments here and there of them playing that level of basketball. Right now, we're seeing 30 minutes of it every night, but then we're seeing 18 of what the heck was that. So, yes, I'm really encouraged by that. I think it's very refreshing because right before the trade deadline, it was getting tough to watch this team. But I guess it's just me trying to play the other side and feeling like I need to remind myself that there's still a lot has to go right for this team to make the substantial jump that they need to next season. They have the tools to do it, but it has to happen. And, I don't think that it's just a certainty.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that there are tweaks. It can't even be tweaks. There has to be substantive changes this offseason. Like, we're talking like one or two new starters. Like, that's where we're at. I mean, this team has to have, like, we're talking 20 to 40% of your starting lineup has to be different. And
a coach
of your bench is probably 2 or 3, maybe 5. Like, if you go deeper in the bench, you're right, a new coach. And that's not to say anything negative about Alvin Gentry. I think he's been someone who's tried to keep this thing on the rails all season long, and he's done a yeoman's job of doing that. This has been very, very difficult. Like, this has not been a normal season.
We heard Alvin say early in the year that this is the worst game I've ever been a part of. And then we heard him say it again a couple games later, and there were just a couple more moments where I'm like, this probably tops that, but if I were him, I wouldn't keep saying that either. So,
and like at this point, Alvin is doing what he can do. I think he understands. He understands what's happening, but at the same time, like, some of the wrinkles he's putting in, man, like, all of a sudden this team looks like there is no more just like flipping the ball around the perimeter. There's not like, we're not watching this same offensive, like again, it's what I saw from Iowa. I was watching Keegan Murray, and I watched the offense, and I'm like, oh man, this is that same thing that I watched the Kings do, where they just go
all triggered
around the perimeter again. And didn't you? I was listening. You on a podcast. You said against Utah there was a play where they didn't get the. Say this.
The shot they get up has about 2 seconds left from Davion Mitchell. That entire possession, they didn't dribble inside the 3-point line. What is this? Like, and
what is this?
What I was like, what am I watching? I rewatched. Like, technically, Harrison Barnes' foot goes inside the line. But that's all we got here. It was tough. And I think kind of a difference here is obviously De'Aaron having turned it on in the way that he has, but he's also, last night he played 42 minutes. Like the 6 minutes that he wasn't out there was kind of that beginning of the fourth that looked gross.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is that De'Aaron is playing really well, and he's playing a lot. He doesn't seem to have issue with it.
He's playing incredible. He's averaging, what do we look, 29.5 points, almost 7 assists a game. That's not since a trade. That's since he came back.
He came back
the
first game without Tyrese.
Yeah,
first game without Tyrese, but Sabonis was not there yet.
Yeah. So during that stretch, and he's had over 20 points in 16 straight games. He's had 3 straight over 30. He's had 2 40-point games in the last. We're talking about the last 15 games.
A good handful of maybe 2 or 3 double-digit assist games, at least 2.
He's got 4 double-doubles.
Oh, there you go.
4 of his 5 double-doubles on the season have come since he came back from injury. So the one game before Sabonis came onto the team. Look, he's playing like a superstar. He's not playing like a star level. I mean, he literally, and Alvin keeps saying this, like, he's not one of the best guards in the league. He's one of the best players in the league right now. He's playing that well. So we got to figure out if he can be that player next year.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of if people are like, well, De'Aaron just kind of turns it on at the beginning of the year? Like, do you feel like in previous seasons there's been segments of the year where De'Aaron really performs at a high level? Like, why is this different?
Yeah, I mean, we can look last year. I mean, he had a stretch last year where he was incredible as well, and he did the same exact thing, and then he finished the season with COVID, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, he missed the final 10 games of the season with COVID. He didn't have to miss the final 10 games, but there's a point where you shut it down because they weren't going to make the play-in. But when I look at him and I'm like the way he's playing right now, it's just stunning to watch. Because there was it Utah? Maybe it was Denver. I was watching some clips of it was Denver, of some of the things he's done over the last week. The way that he changes, he accelerates and decelerates, the way he changes speed and direction is so incredibly crazy. And I've watched it. There was a play where he blew by somebody, stepped to the outside, stepped to the inside, stepped back to the outside, went around that person, and dipped back underneath them to the left. And it was just like, I don't even know how he did that.
Yeah.
Like, it was like the path that you saw from him was so stunning, and it was all in the flow, like just attack.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of guys either are ones to slither around contact, like Kyrie, or either play through contact, and like an Isaiah Thomas. And those are probably 2 extremes of that.
Yeah.
But De'Aaron does a really good job of mixing the two. When he's going into a big, he plays really well through contact and finishes on the way down. Like last year, I remember being blown away constantly by some of the finishes that you were seeing from him. He's one of the best finishers in the league. And at the beginning of this year, you just didn't see it that much.
Yeah.
And now he's gone back to really going through guys. And he said earlier in the year, like, you can't just jump into 7-footers 82 games a year.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an aspect of it. Like, he looks fresh. He looks engaged. He's got, all these moves going on, and he's piecing everything together. I do think he's turned it on at other portions for previous seasons, but this feels like easily the best De'Aaron Fox that I've ever seen. And 15 games is substantial. It needs to be more before I'm like, I am expecting it going into next game. I'm expecting it every single night, but give me the final 10 here also.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the Kings do need to lose games. And I know, like, I think you can still circle, they've got another game against the Pelicans, they've got a game against the Pacers, they've got 2 against the Rockets, and that's kind of it, right? Of their last 12 that are even, like, really possible. I mean, not possible. I mean, they can beat, like, what we saw with the Bulls. They can beat plenty of teams.
Donte DiVincenzo, career high tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
His career high is only 25.
What?
I was surprised.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but like we get to the end of the season, they play like the Clippers and the Suns in the final 2 games. They still have a game against. We talk about like the Bucks, Celtics, Golden State. They have someone else on this homestand that's like the schedule is brutal. Like to get to the finish
Play
line.
Miami.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a bunch of big time teams that are fighting for playoff position. So, like getting wins here is not going to be super easy. But I still like the way they're playing. I still like the fact that they're in every game, that they're fighting, that they're showing me that they haven't just totally quit on Alvin Gentry. Do they lose? Yeah. But at the same time, I think a lot of people should be fine with that. I think you walk out of Golden One Center right now, everyone has been entertained in almost every game, like for the last week. Like you walk away, you're like, hey, that was a fun game. They didn't win, but that was fun. That was a lot of fun. And so, I'm excited to see what happens here, and I'm excited to see what happens like in the summer. And this thing is it's gonna take off. Like the first couple of days coming out of the season is going to be wild. I think the DiVincenzo situation is going to be interesting. I think whether they can make changes, the trade, the draft is going to be really interesting. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks and a couple of months coming up. Okay, so we've got to get to the business of basketball.
What do we got?
I think, you know what? Here's what we're going to do for this week. You just had a draft show with Bryant West, right?
Yes.
And I sat there and listened to the whole thing. I thought it was really intriguing. But let's dig into the draft a little bit. Did you watch? You watched enough this weekend of like conference tournament stuff and all that?
I did.
Was there anything that stood out to you that, like, what do you take away from watching players? So it's one thing when you're studying the draft, because I've done this for a long time. I've done so many mock drafts, it's ridiculous. When you're studying for the draft, sometimes we get in the habit of watching a bunch of cool mixtapes, right? Or watching a bunch of clips from a player, like here are all the pick and rolls, here are all the 3-point shots. And so you're watching these things play out. Was there anything this weekend that when you watch a full game of somebody stood out more than someone else?
I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, so I dove even more into Keegan Murray. And it's not that I don't like him. I think that there is a starter in Keegan Murray, a starter that Sacramento needs. I was a little unimpressed with him on the defensive end for as much hype, or like if I'm watching these scouting reports that people put together or articles, like if you watch the highlights of him, he looks phenomenal defensively.
Yep.
But more often than not, he just isn't a huge impact on that end. I don't think he's a negative.
Just there.
Yeah, and I think that I think there's interesting things like the screens. I probably disagree with you a little bit because it seemed like to me that he was just not asked to do that. Like it seemed like the 5 was his brother when he was out there, or the other big that they had out there, and like I wonder if he was asked to do it a little more. That maybe that could be fine. Like I wasn't all too concerned with this physicality, but like elite shooter. Like I think that even somehow felt understated, even though that people were saying that. Like he, bottom of the net, high release, very, very often.
Didn't need a lot of space.
No.
Couldn't create his own space.
He doesn't have a very quick release necessarily, but yeah, he can hit it contested for sure. But if opponents close out on him hard, putting the ball on the floor was not very encouraging. But again, if you're talking about say Mo Harkless might be kind to him defensively, but that player archetype with...
I think Mo's a better defender, but go ahead.
But Keegan's a lot better 3-point shooter.
Oh, no.
Like, so you're
much
going...
Like, offensively, he's a much better player than Mo.
Yeah, probably not a great comp. But, yeah, I mean, I think that he still is a player that if you're sitting there at 5, 6, 7, where I'm thinking about it, and it's probably more like 6, 7, 8, and no matter what, if they're in that spot, like this draft, I think even if I was sitting at 3, I would strongly consider trading the pick, favoring doing that. So with Chet and Jabari Smith being the clear 1-2. If those
Yeah.
guys are available, I'm taking them and not thinking twice about it. So yeah, I think that like Keegan's in a spot where if you're the bare minimum that I would be okay with is them making a pick at 5 to 9 that they really believe in, that is going to be starting on this team at some point in the near future, and then also going out and trading Rashawn Holmes and getting another guy that fits your rotation better. And all of a sudden, like maybe you do have 2 fringe starters. Like if you add Keegan Murray and like Luke Kennard, for example, like I don't love that, but it's like the bare minimum where I'm okay with going into next year.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm at with Keegan. Like, I'm fine. I think he's a good fit on the team. He's just not substantial enough for how big of a change the team needs to make.
I think that's a very good distinction. So, like, when I watched him, I thought, number one, he doesn't hit screens at all. He slips every screen. And he doesn't even slip them like he's going somewhere. He just doesn't set them. He doesn't get in the way. He doesn't, like, actually, no one feels him. So I thought physicality-wise, I didn't like his physicality. I thought one game he put up 9 rebounds, one game he put up 11. I should also preface this with, I think they played 4 days in a row.
Think so.
Yeah. So
Big Ten tournament.
It is possible that he was a little worn out. I mean, it's a crazy week. I thought the scoring was like, okay, everyone kept talking about how he's the most creative, like one of the best scorers in the country, that he might be the best scorer coming into the draft. I'm like, okay, he handles the ball like Rudy Gay, young Rudy Gay. He doesn't have Rudy Gay's athleticism, not even remotely close. He's not the finisher that Rudy Gay is. He's a better perimeter shooter than Rudy Gay was as a young player, for sure. But so I'm taking that comp off the table. I don't think he's as fluid as an athlete. I don't even think he can get to the rim like Rudy Gay could. I mean, he certainly can't finish like Rudy Gay. I thought rebounding-wise, he almost stumbled into close to double-doubles, and that was like a lot of missed shots. There was like 2 or 3 rebounds where I thought, oh, that was a good rebound.
It's because Caleb Swanigan was swallowing them up.
Yeah, we don't even know that guy's name.
Purdue is big man.
Yeah, Purdue's big man literally just put up Caleb Swanigan numbers and like
Passing.
He was a beast.
Yeah,
Yeah, passing.
like, hold on. Here.
Yeah, I know. He was interesting.
How many second rounders do the Kings have?
He's a senior. I don't know if he'll get drafted, but like talk about a veteran college player. Also say that Keegan is an old sophomore. He's
22?
He's 20. I think he's already 21.
Okay.
And like, look, if he were a guy that the Kings selected, I wouldn't hate it, but I think his ceiling would be Harrison Barnes. But I don't know that he can get to Harrison Barnes' status. And I also, like, I said it before, like, he reminds me of Marvin Williams. And as I watched him, I just kept seeing Marvin Williams. Like, they're sort of blocky through the hips. Like, I did not see the shot blocking that people talked about. He blocked, like, the 7'4" guy on one shot where, like, the dude had no idea he was right next to him, and he just swatted him from behind. And that guy's huge. 7'4", 295.
We don't need the name. If you saw it, you would know
That's
what
a
guy we're talking about.
That's a giant kid, yeah.
I think he has a lot of tools defensively. Like, his length really pops off the screen. I think that he tries to use that length a lot, understandably so, but kind of leaves him in maybe a situation where he took a risk and probably shouldn't have. Like, you know, I see the tools with him defensively and think there's an aspect of him being raw there. And that's where I see the potential for an upside with him, because I don't know, like, if he puts the ball on the deck a little bit better, like, I don't know that does all that much for me with there's no, like, finishing, or his pull-up game wasn't amazing to me or anything like that. Like, that's where I see the potential growth. Yeah, but you're not doing like
on occasion I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. That looked nice. Like, even if he didn't hit the shot, I'm like, okay, I get that. You can get him down low. But again, I thought he didn't have physicality. I thought that there were plenty of times where he was slightly lost on the defensive end, just kind of going through the motions a little bit. So I don't know. I walked away. And then I guess we'll talk about, we'll kill a couple of minutes here on this. He also played against Jaden Ivey, right?
Mm-hmm. In the Big Ten championship.
Okay, so like when you do player comps, like I try to watch players, and like normally I instantly see some other player, and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. But
his barber had a player comp in mind.
Whoever is the stylist for Jaden Ivey is like sign him up. Like that should be like spectacular, because they made him look exactly like John Morant.
And it's not a common haircut.
He looks exactly like John Morant on the court. And then all of a sudden he flies in and does something wild and crazy, and you're like, holy cow. He looks just like Ja. I'm all in. Like, you can give me that guy all day long, and it's not because I think he's Ja, because he's actually like the shooting guard version of he's
nowhere near the same passer.
No, he's not the creator for other people. He does make some nice passes, and he does have some flash to his game, but his ability to attack and to accelerate through is just absolutely, and he's reckless abandon like Ja. Like he doesn't mind trying to hammer a ball on a big guy all the time. And he also does some crazy things. He can score with either hand at the rim. He's not a great shooter. He needs to develop as a shooter. He needs to develop as a defender.
You know who else he sounds like?
Who?
De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron Fox. Yeah, I mean, I thought, like, my comparison while I was watching him, it might not have been Ja as much as it was DeJounte Murray. I was like, oh, okay. Like, young DeJounte made a bunch of mistakes. I remember that guy had 9 turnovers in a game, 7 turnovers in a game. Like, Popovich is just like, oh! But that's what he reminds me of, like a mistake-prone guy, but his athleticism and his skill set is so off the charts that you're like, oh, I'm not passing. If I'm sitting at number 3, I have to really consider Banchero, even though I'm not convinced that he's the guy. But I have to look at Ivy and just like, oh, is there a way? Like, could you have 2 De'Aaron Foxes where, again, they're just flying off of all of these back cuts and motion, and Sabonis like setting picks and like having guys move all over the place? He probably won't fit and wouldn't fit, and you're going to have a top 4 pick to get him at a minimum, because I think he's actually a guy who will probably move up. I don't think he'll pass either the top guys, but I still like Ja, who moved up. Like, I mean, there's been some guys like that. Even I think Derrick Rose moved up a little bit in the draft. So anyway, I liked him.
Yeah, I certainly can make the pitch or make the argument for his fit. And it's just being a Portland type team, when it not exact play style, but it's you have 2 offensive oriented guards that are not doing much for you defensively. Actually, they are doing a lot for the other team when they're playing defense. Pretty poor defenders. And I don't think Ivy's horrible or anything, but I do think he's a negative defender in the same way that, like, that's probably where I'm at with De'Aaron. And then Nurkic is the Sabonis, where you have a passing big that you're kind of playing off of. And what you're banking on at that point is you need to be a top 5 offense and just be not worse than like 20th, 22nd on defense. I don't know that I'd love to watch that, but like if Monty were to make that pick, Monty, Wes Wilcox, and the rest of the front office were to make that pick and then come out and preach to us that this guy we couldn't not pick this guy. He was best player available. I would understand, depending on where it's at. But like, I understand if somebody were to view him as you just can't not take that talent. I don't know that I'm there.
I like, that's where I am. I'm like, oh.
I think what I would do
he's
first,
so talented.
If the league values him in the way that the media kind of seems to be talking about him, then I would be really, really making sure that there's not a crazy package that you can get if you're sitting there at 3 or 4 to go and trade that pick. Because, yeah, if he has that sort of league-wide evaluation and it's a team that needs that type of player, that player archetype, like maybe you're getting something that is really intriguing back for him. Like I kind of view both Paulo and Jaden Ivey as, if they are really valuable also as trade assets and you're sitting there at 3-4, that's probably where I lean. And obviously it's hard. You don't know what sort of deals we'd be talking about, but those two guys worry me a little bit. I talk myself into it. If you just think they're supremely talented and got to go that direction because there's no decent trade offers on the table, sure. But I would be really trying to figure out, does the rest of the league love these guys too, and what can we get?
Yeah, can you get John Collins for the fourth pick in the draft?
Right.
Or the third pick in the draft without giving up Harrison Barnes, with giving up other players and not Harrison Barnes? I think that's where I would go. Because that's, if you're going to try to be good relatively soon, the Kings just can't be bad forever. I mean, they can't be bad forever, but you need to actually establish something next
Define
season.
forever.
Well, 16 years is forever. So we've already lasted forever. Now, what I don't want to see is 17, 18, 19, 20. That would be tough, especially as someone who's covered this team for 12 already, and 12 losing seasons is bad.
And it's actually got to turn around pretty quick next year. I think this is where I'm, as I try to remind myself and bring myself down from optimism that probably has a lot to do with, again, like it was a really tough watch before the deadline.
Yeah.
And it's relieving now. Like you said, when people are leaving Golden One Center recently, I think there's a good feeling they just enjoyed watching this basketball team.
Yeah, they try hard.
Yeah, and that just wasn't the case before. But there's going to be a lot of changes next year where all the different things that we've laid out in this episode, like you don't have that much time to allow those to mesh. If you take 20 games and you've won 6 of them, we can see it. Like, you can't have that in as long going into next season. It's just very quick. I think that this whole, it's looking good, but they're not coming away with wins, instantly unacceptable next year.
No, that can't keep happening. All right, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't.
No final thoughts?
James runs this place. You can get in here whenever, man. I can't get in here on game days sometimes. They're are you sure you're media?
I'm the mayor of Golden One. Yeah.
Damn.
You know what, though? I
got one for you.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Chimezie?
No.
Okay.
We're deep in. Hour and 22 in. Maybe we'll talk about Metu later in the week. Like the Metu situation, because I think we talked about it a little bit. I don't think you could have Metu and Lyle on the same team next year, because I think you have to have someone else there at that position. All right, so let's see. What do we have? We already talked about make sure you give us a thumbs up. Subscribe down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on any one of the bajillion different audio platforms, give us a rating and a review. That always helps us. We've got the Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour part 4 infectious disease control coming up next Thursday. Not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So make sure that you're around for that. In order to get an invite, you have to be a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. If you're interested in the merch, which is awesome, it's down below. There's a promo code that ends at the end of the month for 15% off any merch purchase. Outside of that, we'll be back on Thursday. It should be an entertaining week of basketball. We're going to be here at the arena a lot. Saturday is the farewell to Arco Arena. I think you can still get tickets on Kings.com, I think, and it's free, but you have to actually get tickets if you want to be there. Are you going to go?
I've never been to Arco, but it might be a first. Will you be there?
I don't know. We'll see. I love Arco Arena. I grew up going to games at Arco Arena. I've been there a million times. I saw U2 there. I think no doubt
that's the highlight
for U2. I saw playoff games there. I saw Bush and the Goo Goo Dolls there. I've seen plenty of concerts there. I have seen way too many, and they're just all the concerts are flooding in my head that I've seen there. But I've also been to hundreds and hundreds of games there. Anyway, so that's really cool. I don't know like what's going on there. You need to go to kings.com if you have any interest in that. But it should be a cool event. They're not blowing up the arena for like another 6 months. But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. And outside of that, thanks for tuning into the King Speed podcast. So for Brenden Nunes, I'm James Ham. We'll see you on Thursday.
Donte DiVincenzo, career high incoming.
Incoming.